The village of Riverwood slept under a blanket of stars, but by the silver river, one soul was always awake. Lira. As the moon reached its highest point, she would stand on the mossy bank, lift her face to the sky, and begin her song. It was a haunting melody, a string of words in a language no one knew, filled with a sorrow and a sweetness that made the night itself hold its breath. From the shadows of the willow trees, the villagers watched with suspicion in their hearts. "There she goes again," an old woman whispered, clutching her shawl. "That song, it does not belong to this world." A young man, emboldened by fear, picked up a stone and hurled it into the water. The stone landed with an ugly plop. Lira's song trembled for a single heartbeat, and the moon above seemed to flicker, its light dimming for a terrifying instant. As the last note of her song faded into the night, a deep silence fell. The villagers held their breath, waiting. And then they saw it. The river's current, which had been flowing steadily for 1,000 years, began to slow, until the water's surface became as still and dark as polished stone. By morning, the whispers had become a roar. "Did you see the river last night? It went still as death." Old Man Hemlock claimed his best milk cow had gone dry. Young Kale's rabbit traps were all empty, the bait untouched. Fear, cold and sharp, snaked through the village. They connected every misfortune to the girl who sang to the moon. Taran, who had once been Lira's closest friend, felt a knot of unease in his stomach. He remembered a different Lira, a girl with a laugh like sunshine. But the stares of the other young men were heavy. To protect his own place among them, he lowered his voice and added to the chorus of blame. "It is unnatural," he muttered, avoiding his father's eyes. "No good can come from such a nightly ritual." The village elder, his face grave, called a gathering at the old oak tree. The air was thick with panic and accusation. He listened to the fearful voices, his own heart troubled, and finally raised his hands for silence. His decree was swift and severe. His voice cut through the murmurs: "If she sings again tomorrow night, she will be banished from Riverwood forever." The next day, Lira moved through her work in her father's small pottery shop like a ghost. Her hands, usually so sure and graceful as they shaped the wet clay, now trembled slightly. She could feel the weight of every sideways glance, every hushed conversation that died when she approached. She pretended not to hear, focusing on the familiar feel of the cool clay spinning beneath her palms. In the corner, her mother sat by the hearth, a frail woman wrapped in a thin shawl, her breathing a soft, raspy rhythm. She beckoned Lira closer, her eyes, though clouded with illness, held a fierce, unyielding light. She took her daughter's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "My child," she whispered, her voice a dry leaf rustling. "You must not stop. No matter what they say, no matter what they do. Your song is not yours to silence." A single tear traced a path through the clay dust on Lira's cheek. She nodded, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. As dusk painted the sky in shades of purple and gray, a heavy resolve settled in her heart. The villagers expected obedience. But she had a promise to keep. When midnight drew near, she walked towards the river, her path lit only by the defiant glow of the rising moon. The riverbank was eerily quiet, as if the very insects were holding their breath. Lira stood in her usual spot, the moonlight casting a pale, silvery halo around her. She closed her eyes, drawing in a deep, shaky breath. Then, she began to sing. Her voice was softer tonight, laced with a tremor of fear, but it still held that same otherworldly power. The notes rose, weaving through the air, and as she sang, the moon seemed to brighten, its light wrapping around her like a protective cloak. For a moment, it was just her and the moon, a silent pact under the watchful stars. But the silence behind her was broken. The crunch of footsteps on dry leaves, the crackle of burning pitch. She did not turn, but her song faltered as the light of a dozen torches surrounded her, painting the river in angry, dancing shades of orange and red. Taran stood at the front of the mob, his face a mask of conflicted emotion. In his hand, he held a hunting spear, its point aimed not at her, but at the river. He stepped forward, his voice rough with a fear he mistook for courage. "Enough, Lira," he shouted, the words echoing across the still water. "Your curse ends tonight." Lira turned slowly, her eyes meeting Terran's. In their depths, he saw not malice, but a profound, bottomless sorrow. It unnerved him. "Terran, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You don't understand." But the crowd behind him was roaring, their fear turning to fury. "Break the curse," someone yelled. Fueled by their rage, Terran acted. He couldn't strike her, so he struck the symbol of her strange ritual. He swung the shaft of his spear hard against the riverbank, right where Lira stood. The force of the blow did not hit her, but it snapped the delicate leather cord around her neck. A small, simple pendant of baked river clay, a charm she had worn since childhood, flew into the air and shattered on a stone. The moment it broke, Lira's song was cut off as if by a knife. A shockwave of pure silence erupted from the riverbank. The brilliant moonlight flickered and died, plunging the world into an inky, starlit darkness. A cold wind howled down from the mountains, and with a great hiss, the water in the river vanished, leaving behind only wet, cracked mud and stranded, gasping fish. The sun rose on a village gripped by terror. The riverbed was a barren scar cutting through their land. The wells, which drew from the same deep source, yielded only trickles of muddy water, then nothing at all. The world had gone dry. The crops in the fields, once green and promising, began to curl and brown at the edges. A strange, lethargic sickness settled over the children, their skin growing hot and dry. The village elder led prayers for rain, but the sky remained a hard, cloudless blue. Terran walked through the dying village, the cheers of the mob now a ghost in his memory. Guilt was a stone in his belly. That night, as he tried to sleep, he heard it, a faint, echoing fragment of Lira's song, drifting on the edge of his hearing. He sat up, his heart pounding, but the room was silent. When he finally fell into a fitful sleep, he dreamed of a great white heron, its feathers glowing with an inner light, standing in the dry riverbed. It did not speak. It simply watched him with ancient, knowing eyes, and in their depths, he saw the reflection of the moon. The dream was a key, unlocking a memory he had long forgotten. Years ago, he and Lira, just children then, were playing by the river. They found a magnificent white heron, its wing bent at a cruel angle, trapped in a thorny bush. Terran had been afraid, whispering that it was a bad omen. But Lira had shushed him, her eyes filled with compassion. She carefully freed the bird, her small hands gentle. She made a poultice from river clay and healing herbs, singing a soft, simple lullaby as she smoothed it over the broken wing. She visited every day, bringing it food and water, singing her little song. Terran had eventually stopped coming, bored by the quiet vigil. But he remembered the day the heron was healed. It didn't just fly away. It stood before Lira, and its beak opened. A voice, like the chime of a silver bell, spoke. "You have saved a life, child of the river," it said. "And a life saved must one day sing for another." The memory shifted, sharpened. He saw an older Lira, her face pale with a fear he now understood. Her mother was dying, the village healer had given up. Desperate, Lira had run to the river, to the place she had saved the heron. The moon was full. The white heron was there, waiting. It spoke again, its voice echoing with the power of the cosmos. "A life is fading. I can stay the hand of darkness, but the balance must be kept. I will restore your mother's breath, but your voice will be bound to mine. Every midnight, you must sing to the moon, to channel its light and maintain the flow of life to your river. This is the bargain." Young Lira, tears streaming down her face, had nodded. "I agree." The heron touched its beak to a lump of wet river clay. The clay glowed, shaping itself into a simple pendant on a cord. "Wear this always," the spirit warned, its voice growing stern. It is the seal of our vow. If your song ever stops, the balance will break. Darkness will drink the river, and the light will fade from this land. In the present, Taran's guilt was a living thing, chewing at his insides. He saw Lira only once, hurrying to the now dry well with an empty bucket. Her face was gaunt, her eyes hollow. She looked at him, and there was no anger in her gaze, only a deep, weary grief that was worse than any hatred. He turned away, ashamed. Later, he heard the news from the pottery shop. Lira's mother, who had been stable for years, had taken a sudden turn for the worse. Her cough was back, rattling in her chest like stones. Taran crept to their window that night and peered inside. The frail woman lay on her cot, her skin ashen. She grasped Lira's arm, her voice a papery whisper. "The moon, it grows hungry, my daughter. It needs its song." Lira, her own face a mask of despair, nodded. She ran outside, to the barren riverbank, and looked up at the silent moon. She opened her mouth, straining, her body trembling with the effort to sing. But no sound came out. Not a whisper, not a sigh. Her voice was gone. A single, silver tear rolled down her cheek and fell onto the dust. Where it landed, it did not sink in, but lay on the ground, a tiny, shimmering speck of stardust. Taran's dreams became a prison. Every night, he was back on the riverbank, watching the clay pendant shatter. Every night, he heard the phantom echo of Lira's song, now twisted into a wail of despair. He took to wandering the woods by day, avoiding the accusing eyes of his neighbors, who were now starting to whisper that his action had doomed them all. One night, exhausted by guilt, he fell into a deep, troubled sleep. He found himself in a forest glade bathed in cold moonlight. In the center of the glade stood Lira, or a shadow of her, translucent and glowing. She pointed a silent, accusing finger at him. He tried to run, but his feet were rooted to the spot. Her shadow glided towards him, and though it had no voice, the words formed directly in his mind, clear and cold as ice. "You broke the promise," the shadow whisper echoed. "You shattered the seal." He woke with a gasp, sitting bolt upright in his bed. The hut was dark, but a pool of silver moonlight had gathered on the earth floor by his feet. As he watched, terrified, the light shifted, forming the perfect, shimmering silhouette of a girl singing. The next morning, Taran went to the elder's house, his resolve firm. The old man was sitting on his porch, staring out at the cracked riverbed, his face etched with a deep sorrow. "Elder," Taran began, his voice rough with lack of sleep. "I was wrong. We were all wrong about Lira." The elder sighed, a long, weary sound. "I know, my boy. The old stories. I had forgotten them until it was too late." He gestured to the dying land. "This river does not flow from mountain snow alone. It flows from the moon's blessing, from a covenant made long ago." The song was not a curse. It was the key that turned the lock, keeping the water of life flowing into our world. He looked at Taran, his eyes old and tired. "Without her song, we are not just suffering a drought, Taran. We are already dying. The connection has been severed." Taran felt the truth of the words like a physical blow. He straightened his shoulders, a new, desperate purpose filling him. He looked the elder in the eye, his voice firm. "I will find her. I will find Lira and I will make this right. I swear it." The elder simply nodded, a flicker of hopeless pity in his eyes. For no one in Riverwood had seen Lira since the night the river died. Taran went straight to the small pottery shop at the edge of the village. It looked abandoned. The wooden sign creaked on a broken hinge. The kiln outside was cold and dark, its fire dead for days. He pushed the door open, the sound loud in the profound silence. Inside, the world was frozen. Half-finished pots sat on the wheels, the clay dried and cracked. Shelves of finished bowls and cups were covered in a fine layer of dust. In the corner, Lira's mother lay on her cot, still and pale, but breathing in shallow, ragged breaths. And in the center of the room, on a small pedestal, was a single, unfinished sculpture. It was a heron, its wings spread as if for flight, but one wing was snapped clean off, lying in pieces beside it. The detail was exquisite, the feathers painstakingly carved. As Taran stared, overwhelmed by the scene of utter defeat, a faint glimmer caught his eye. The broken clay of the heron's body began to glow with a soft, silvery light. The light pulsed, and within its glow, he could see a faint, shimmering image, Lira's face, her eyes closed as if in sleep, trapped within the cold, unyielding clay. Taran knelt before the glowing sculpture, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Lira," he whispered, his voice cracking. The clay heron did not speak, but the silvery light within it swirled and shifted. It formed pictures in the air, like reflections on water. He saw a vast, shimmering realm of floating lakes and trees made of solidified moonlight. He saw a great gate of silver, and beyond it, a cold, dark altar. He saw Lira's spirit, frail and lost, kneeling before it. The images were a plea, a desperate map. The glowing form of the heron sculpture raised its broken neck and pointed its beak, not towards the door, but towards the far wall of the shop, which was covered in a hanging tapestry. Understanding dawned on Taran. He walked to the tapestry and pulled it aside. Behind it was a small, high window, and through it, he could see the reflection of the full moon on the still, dark puddle that was all that remained of the river. The spirit was pointing towards the moon's reflection. Without a second thought, driven by guilt and a dawning, desperate love, Taran turned and ran from the shop. He sprinted to the riverbank and, without pausing, stepped into the moon-reflected puddle. Instead of muddy water, his foot met a blinding silver light. He was pulled down, vanishing beneath the surface of the earth. Taran did not drown. He fell through a tunnel of swirling starlight and liquid moonlight, landing softly on a surface that felt like cool, solid mist. He stood up, his breath catching in his throat. He was in the moon realm. The sky was a deep, velvety purple dotted with large, low-hanging stars. The ground beneath his feet was a silvery, moss-like substance. Trees of glowing crystal reached towards a sky where two small, pale moons hung instead of one. In front of him, a lake of quicksilver lay still and perfect. And there, waiting for him on the shore, was the white heron, its plumage blazing with pure light, its broken wing now perfectly healed. "You have come, child of regret," the heron spoke, its voice the chime of 100 silver bells. "But regret alone is not enough. To free the singer, you must first free yourself. You must face the 3 mirrors of truth." As the heron spoke, the surface of the silvery lake rippled. The water rose up, swirling and solidifying into a tall, oval mirror framed in twisted, thorny vines. Taran stepped forward and looked into its glass. It did not show his reflection. It showed him laughing with his friends, pointing at a young Lira as she sang by the river, mockery etched clearly on his face. The image in the mirror of pride was merciless. It showed Taran not as a villain, but as a coward. He saw himself joining in the laughter when others mocked Lira's strange behavior. He saw himself turning away when she needed a friend, all to preserve his own standing among the village boys. The reflection in the mirror twisted, his own face becoming grotesque and sneering, covered in the thorns of his own shame. "You were proud," the mirror's voice hissed, not from outside, but from within his own mind. "You valued the opinions of fools over the heart of a friend." The thorny vines from the mirror's frame shot out, wrapping around his arms and legs, biting into his skin with a cold, sharp pain. He struggled, but they only tightened, threatening to pull him into the mirror itself, to be trapped forever in his own arrogance. He stopped fighting. He looked directly at his monstrous reflection, and for the first time, he spoke the truth aloud, his voice raw. "I was not strong. I was weak. I feared. I feared loving what others mocked." The admission hung in the air. The moment the words left his lips, the thorny vines loosened, turned to dust, and disintegrated into shimmering motes of light. The mirror faded away. No sooner had the first mirror vanished than the silvery lake stirred again. A second mirror rose, this one framed in jagged, broken shards of obsidian that seemed to drink the light. Taran looked into it and flinched. It showed the night he broke the pendant. But this time, the perspective was different. He saw the scene from Lira's eyes. He saw the terror in her expression, the betrayal, the moment her eyes met his just before he struck. He saw the exact instant the clay shattered, and he saw the light in her eyes extinguish. The reflection in this mirror was his own, but his eyes were empty, hollow pits. "Would you have done it?" the mirror demanded, its voice the sound of cracking ice. "If you had known the cost? If every soul in Riverwood, every child, every elder, had been standing here watching, would you still have raised your hand against her?" Taran fell to his knees before the mirror, the weight of his action crushing him. He could not lie. He wept, his tears falling onto the silver moss. "No," he sobbed. "I would not have. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Please, let my life pay for hers. Take me instead." His words of true, selfless sacrifice hung in the air. With a sound like 1,000 sighs, the mirror of guilt shattered into 1,000,000 pieces, dissolving into the mist around them. A deep peace settled over the realm. The third and final mirror emerged from the lake not with a ripple, but with a soft, melodic chime. Its frame was woven from living moonflowers and strands of starlight. Taran looked into it, and he saw Lira as a child, kneeling by the injured heron. He saw the pure, uncomplicated love in her eyes as she smoothed the healing clay over its wing. He heard her soft, childish lullaby, a song of compassion, not duty. The image shifted to show her making the bargain with the moon spirit, her face streaked with tears, not for herself, but for her dying mother. The heron spirit spoke from beside him, its voice now gentle. "You have seen pride and guilt. Now you see the truth. You see love." Her song was never about power or curse. It was a song of love. For her mother. For this land. Love is not a weakness, Taran. It is the only voice loud enough to reach the moon, and the only force strong enough to mend a broken world. As the heron spoke, Taran felt a warmth spread through his chest. He looked down. A soft, silver light was emanating from his heart, pulsing in time with the rhythm of the realm. The light was the echo of the love he had finally understood. The heron led Taran away from the lake, towards a magnificent gate that stood between two towering crystal trees. The Gate of Voices was made of swirling silver mist, and in its currents, faint, beautiful faces could be seen, their mouths open in silent song. Guarding the gate were ethereal figures, spirits made of harmonizing light and shadow. They did not speak, but their message flowed into Taran's mind. Only a voice may pass through this gate. A voice that has been tested. A voice that understands its true song. Taran looked at the heron, then back at the gate. He knew what he had to do. He had found his pride and his guilt, now he would offer his voice. He stepped forward. "I have nothing of value to give," he said, his voice clear and steady. "But I offer my voice. Take it. Let it be the key that opens this gate for her." He closed his eyes, offering his words, his laughter, his very ability to speak, as penance and payment. The singing spirits swirled around him. There was a sensation of a gentle pull, a soft extraction. When he opened his eyes, he tried to say Lira's name, but no sound came out. His voice was gone. The great silver gate swung open without a sound. Beyond the gate was a wide, circular platform under the vast, starry sky. At its center was a simple altar of black stone, cold and dark. And there, kneeling before it with her head bowed, was Lira. Her spirit form was faint, flickering like a candle in the wind. She felt his presence and looked up. Her eyes, those same deep pools of sorrow, widened in shock. She saw Taran, his face etched with a peace she had never seen before. He walked to her, and she stood, confusion warring with a faint, fragile hope. He opened his mouth to explain, to apologize, but no words came out. He simply looked at her, his eyes saying everything his voice could not. He reached out and took her hands. They were cold. Then, with one hand, he pointed to her chest, where the pendant had once lain. He then pointed to his own chest, to the place where his heart glowed silver. He pressed his palm over her heart. The moment his skin touched her spirit form, the silver light from his chest flared, flowing into her. Her own form brightened, solidifying. Two streams of light, one from her, one from him, twined together in a silent, beautiful duet, a song without sound that filled the empty space around them. The light from their joined spirits grew so bright it drowned out the stars. From this brilliance, a vast presence emerged. The moon spirit did not have a single form, it was the light, the darkness, the cold, and the hope all at once. Its voice was the humming of the universe, ancient and immense. It regarded the two mortals, its gaze weighing their very souls. One sang out of love, the spirit's voice resonated through Terran and Lira's beings. A selfless vow for another's life. The other acted out of fear, but now offers out of guilt transformed by understanding. The presence focused on Terran. You have passed the mirrors. You have surrendered your voice. What more can you give? Terran, unable to speak, met the spirit's gaze. He bowed deeply, then knelt before Lira. He placed a hand over his own silent heart, then pointed to her, and finally to the dark altar. The meaning was unmistakable, asterisk her song belongs to life. Her light must return to the world. Take what remains of me, asterisk the spirit seemed to consider this, the very air trembling with its judgment. The balance demands a price, it hummed. A life for a life. A voice for a voice. A spirit to power the song, so the singer may live. Lira understood a moment before it happened. Her eyes flew wide with horror. She tried to pull her hands from Terran's, to shake her head, to scream asterisk, no. Asterisk, but she was still mute. Terran simply looked at her, a final, gentle smile touching his lips. It was a smile of peace, of completion. The moonlight that enveloped them both began to concentrate on Terran alone. It grew denser and brighter, pulling away from Lira. He began to glow with the intensity of a star, his form becoming transparent, then dissolving into a million points of pure, shimmering starlight. Lira watched, a silent scream trapped in her throat, as the boy she had once loved, the man who had broken her world and then died to save it, vanished before her eyes. The last thing she saw was the love in his eyes. The starlight that was Terran swirled once around her, a final, gentle caress, and then shot upwards, painting a new, permanent constellation in the moon realm's sky. The moon spirit's voice was a soft whisper in her mind. The balance is restored. The river will flow. Sing, child. Sing for him. Sing for all. Lira awoke with a gasp, her body jolting as if from a long fall. She was lying on the cool, damp moss of the Riverwood riverbank. The dawn sky was pink and gold overhead. For a moment, she thought it had all been a terrible dream. But then she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned her head. Her mother was kneeling beside her, her face no longer pale and gaunt, but filled with healthy color, her eyes clear and bright. Lira, her mother whispered, pulling her into a tight, strong embrace. All around them, villagers were emerging from their homes, drawn by a sound they had almost forgotten, the gentle, steady rush of flowing water. The river was back, fuller and clearer than ever before, its surface glittering in the morning sun. They gathered on the banks, staring in awe, first at the water, then at Lira and her healed mother. Their faces were a mixture of shame, wonder, and dawning hope. As Lira slowly stood, helped by her mother, a pure white heron glided down from the sky. It landed gracefully on a stone in the middle of the river. It turned its head and looked directly at Lira, and in its deep, dark eyes, she saw not a spirit, but a familiar, loving sorrow. A recognition that shattered her heart and mended it all at once. That evening, the entire village gathered in the square. Lira stood before them, no longer the strange, silent girl, but a young woman who held a profound mystery in her eyes. She spoke, her voice once again her own, but now it carried a new weight, a resonance that held everyone spellbound. She told them everything. The injured heron. The moon spirit's bargain. The true purpose of her midnight song. And she told them of Terran, not of his fear and failure, but of his courage and his ultimate sacrifice in the moon realm. She told them how he had faced the mirrors of his soul and given his very essence to restore their water and their lives. Those who had mocked her the loudest now wept openly. The elder stepped forward, his head bowed in respect. We were blind, he declared, his voice ringing out for all to hear. We feared a song we did not understand. From this day forward, Lira will be known as the Keeper of the Moon. And we will honor the memory of Terran, the boy who gave us back our future. As he spoke, the white heron on the rooftop spread its magnificent wings. A single, long feather, shimmering with a silver tip, drifted down and landed softly in Lira's open palm. When midnight came, the entire village of Riverwood stood quietly at the edge of the forest, watching. Lira walked to the riverbank, the silver heron feather tucked in her hair. She looked up at the full moon, its light warm and welcoming upon her face. She took a deep breath, and she began to sing. Her voice returned, but it was different. It was stronger, richer, filled with both an ancient power and a very human grief. It was a song of love and loss, of sacrifice and renewal. It echoed across the water, through the trees, and up towards the mountains, a beautiful, heartbreaking melody that promised life. As she held the last, pure note, something miraculous happened. Another voice joined hers. It was a softer, fainter voice, one made of wind and starlight, with no body to give it form. It harmonized with hers perfectly, a gentle tenor to her soaring soprano, weaving through her song, supporting it, completing it. The duet hung in the air for a long, beautiful moment before fading gently away. The villagers listened, their hearts full to bursting with a joy that was also a sorrow. Now, every midnight, the people of Riverwood fall asleep to a lullaby. Two voices drift from the river, one of brilliant, living light, and one of gentle, eternal wind. They sing of promises kept and sacrifices made. Lira still tends her father's pottery shop, and her mother is now the strongest woman in the village. Lira smiles, and there is true joy in her eyes, but those who look closely can see the timeless sorrow there too, the price of a love that saved the world. She often looks at the new constellation in the sky, the one that looks like a boy reaching for a star, and she touches the silver-tipped feather she always wears. The river never fails, the crops are always plentiful, and the children of Riverwood are taught from birth the true meaning of the moon song. The elder often ends the tale with this warning, his voice soft with reverence: never judge a heart whose song you do not understand. Some voices sing not for glory, but to keep the world alive. And high above, the moon and the stars listen, and are pleased.